Hello, world, and welcome back to another episode from Beyond the Matrix. My name is Sarah, and today I'm going to be talking about the planet Mars because it's Tuesday, which is also Mars's day. And I'm going to be taking us through all of the aspects that Mars will be making for the week of January 24th. So, to begin, I'm going to start by reading from Chris Brennan's Hellenistic Astrology about the planet Mars and the significations according to Vettius Valens, who was an ancient astrologer. Mars, Aris, the fiery one. The star of Mars signifies violence, wars, robbery, screams, insolence, adultery, taking away of one's possessions, banishment, exile, estrangement from one's parents, captivity, the rape of women, abortions, sexual intercourse, marriages, loss of good things, lies, hopeless situations, violent thefts, robbery, plundering, separation of friends, anger, fighting, verbal abuse, hatred, lawsuits. He also brings about violent murders, wounds, and bloodshed, attacks of fevers, ulcers, skin eruptions, inflammation, imprisonment, torture, masculinity, perjury, deception. Those who have much experience in wrongdoing, and those who work with fire or iron, those who work with their hands, and masons. He brings about leaders in military service, and high-ranking officers, soldiers, sovereignty, hunting, chasing, falling from heights, or from four-footed animals, poor vision, apoplexy. Of parts of the body he rules over the head, the buttocks, and the genitals. Internally, he rules the blood, the seminal passages, bile, the excretion of feces, the back portion of the individual, walking backwards, and falling on one's back. He also rules that which is hard and abrupt. Of substances he rules iron and the regalia of clothing as a result of the ram, and wine and legumes. It is of the nocturnal sect, the color red and pungent in taste. So Mars has a bad reputation. And if you look to the sky, you can see Mars at night. And it's this glaring, piercing red star compared to the rest of them. Looks very rusty. And especially because Mars has been stationed for a very long time at 8 degrees. So already Mars has been at 8 degrees for about 3.5 to 4 weeks, because this is the point at which Mars has turned around to go direct. So here's Mars, and yeah, this is the god of war. So let's talk about what Mars will be doing for the week. Mars begins today, still at 8 degrees, but finally will move to 9 degrees before the day is over. Today, Mars begins in quincunx with Mercury. So Mars and Mercury have been in this aspect called a quincunx. This is Mercury here, this is Mars here, and this line is telling us that it's a quincunx. And basically, quincunx is referred to as an itch you can't scratch. So it's frustrating. Mars was a lot of those significations, but you can think of it in a simplified way as kind of where you apply your desire and that passion, and that can be good or bad. Like it can be good passion and creativity, eros, or it can be anger, aggression. So with Mercury here, it looks like heated arguments. Mercury is this planet that is associated with our communication, even short distance travel, and just kind of how an idea moves from one place to another, or how the body can move from one place to another in that way. So that's how that relates, is subject-object relationships. And Mercury can be a bit of a trickster. It can really enjoy debate. In the sign of Capricorn, Mercury wants to be constructive and build. And with Mars and Gemini, there might be a lot of ideas that one is flipping through. And Mercury really wants to settle down on one idea, where Mars is still in the spirit of Gemini, bouncing around and learning at a very shallow level. So Mars here, it's quick. Mars is inhabiting the house of Mercury. Mercury is here wanting to build and be constructive. And when I say that Mars is in Mercury's house, it's because Mars is in Gemini, which is the house, the domicile of Mercury. Mercury is away in this very constructive, building, steady, reliable sign of Capricorn, the earth sign. So as I like to do for our reflection, I'm just going to read from Rem Butler's The Archetypal Universe about Mars and Mercury. And this time I'm going to read from the characters and themes section. And maybe this will help to imagine how this could arise in your life. So it says, of Mercury and Mars, qualities of verbal directness, clear and decisive communication, urges to get to the point and speak one's truth, forceful, enthusiastic speech, animated, emphatic gestures while talking, propositions and calls to action, a sharp and passionate mind, mental energy and determination, a single-minded pursuit of one's objectives, a gift for incisive analysis, argument and debate, quick responses, pointed humor, sharp wisecracks and sarcasm. And then it quotes, the first human who hurled an insult instead of a stone was the founder of civilization. And that's by Freud. It also mentions practical skills and dexterity. So I really like that quote about the first human to insult as opposed to launch a stone at someone. That's so Mars versus Mercury, like the intellect versus the brute force. So, and it's funny because Mercury is in Capricorn, which is an earth sign. So it's almost like Mercury has the access to the stones to launch them at Mars if need be. And Mars might have that sharp tongue, that intellect of Gemini. So yeah, this is not not very comfortable. Um, as we move through the week, we're going to see that by the end of today, Mars is going to be at 9 degrees. So it's coming even closer into that aspect with Mercury here. But it's going so slowly because it's speeding up from what looked like a stop. Because in retrograde motion, it looks as though Mars or any planet that's retrograde, it looks as though it's traveling backwards in the sky compared to the rest of the wandering stars. And when it turns direct, it's got a pivot point at which it will stay for, in this case, up to 4 weeks, something like that. And so it depends on how far out the planet is and those kinds of things. But as the week rolls on, we enter into Wednesday, and Mars will be at 9 degrees. On Wednesday, this is when the planet Mars and Mercury will be very close to this quincunx because they're only a degree apart now. Mercury's at 10 degrees, Mars at 9 degrees, has finally moved from that 8 degrees of pivot point for the retrograde cycle. If there's arguments, there could be beautiful things that come from arguments. Finally getting it out on the table. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, just something to be aware of is in the energy. If people seem pretty touchy and sensitive, this is probably a good way to explain it for yourself. And then as we move into the 26th of January, this is when the moon makes another aspect with Mars. And that's going to be a sextile, which again, there's an opportunity there. So even with an outburst of emotions, there's an opportunity here with this sextile to the moon. In these spats, in these arguments, perhaps there's an opportunity as it relates to our individuality and being an individual, because that's what the sign of Aries is about. And when the moon is in Aries, we're really focused on our ability to express our individuality and our self. So again, conflict's not always a bad thing if the result is that everyone understands each other better. But by Sunday, we'll have the sun moving into a trine with Mars. And trines feel very natural. It's like everything just fell into place with a trine. It's effortless. And with the sun in Aquarius, it's very much about either being rebellious, being the black sheep, isolating, new innovative ideas, being the humanitarian, in this sign of Aquarius. And the sun is always the ideal to which we strive. It is, as a collective, maybe during this time of year, this is the ideal to which we strive, these Aquarian ideals. And so it seems to me that this is kind of the result of the arguments of the conflict between Mercury and Mars, is this beautiful trine with Mars and the sun. And so I'm going to read again from Ren Butler's The Archetypal Universe about the sun and Mars. And again, I'm going to read from the characters and themes section. So it says, urges toward young boldness and courage, dynamic action and assertion, physical confidence and strength, bravery and prowess, straight ahead, directness, a stout heart, fighting spirit, honest sweat. Quote, something attempted, something done. By Longfellow. Rugged individualism, an affinity for sports, energetic activity with males, sexual passion and virility. Reich's ideal of the genital character. So yeah, I didn't even mention that Mars can be associated with sports because it's kind of like play fighting or play war. And so that could be something, is that this is something sports related, especially with it being in Gemini. It can be very playful too. So this looks like a nice way to end the week, especially after all the arguing between Mercury and Mars. or at least the discomfort between Mercury and Mars. It might just feel like tension. Maybe nothing really erupts, but it just feels like tension. It feels like something is not how it ought to be. And then by Monday, we will have the moon closing in on Mars for a conjunction. So that by Tuesday or Mars's day next week, Mars and the moon will be together. And for the sake of consistency, since I've read for the other aspects, I'm going to read the significations of Mars and the moon from Rem Butler's The Archetypal Universe. And so in the characters and themes section, it says of the moon and Mars, qualities of emotional directness and sincerity, frankness and candor, an emotional commitment to one's actions, feelings of purpose, fighting spirit, defiant swagger, inner strength, a healthy flow of emotional energy and vigor, vitality and passion, ardent impulses to bond and connect, constructive energy and activity in one's home, urges to work at home, vigorous and passionate mothers, protective mothers, active work for one's community. Quote, and so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. End quote. President John F. Kennedy. Emotional impact, catharsis of strong feelings. That feels nice after that aspect with the sun, after a lot of discourse between Mercury and Mars, trying to get things moving, and Mars is just still spinning or taking its time to get moving again, and feeling very frustrated from that just in general, the fact that it was retrograde and stationed. And that's something that I wanted to talk about, was Mars was in a similar location to where it is now at the beginning of September. And so we're kind of reliving that. I have the real-time clock set for August 30th, and it's at 5 degrees. And so over the course of weeks, it's going to make its way to 25 degrees of Gemini, which it reached at around Halloween and then turned retrograde. It stationed there at 25 degrees and began going back over the same degrees. So since Halloween, we've been reviewing something in this area of life, and Mars reached that 8 degrees around the new year, around the Gregorian New Year. So around January 1st, Mars reached that 8 degrees. It was really around Christmas, I think, and stayed there since then. Just started moving because turned direct and had to kind of pick up speed. So now by the time we reach next Tuesday, Mars will have moved 2 degrees from that pivot point. It'll be at 10 degrees. And it's finally like moving things along. It's just feels finally like something broke and now we can move. It's like the gate needed to open, or, you know, the glass had to shatter. Something had to be cut away. And now we can move forward. Yeah, those are my reflections. Hopefully some of that resonates for you as well. It just depends on your own natal chart where these kind of archetypes might arise. And tomorrow I will be back to talk about Mercury. Don't tell anybody Mercury is my favorite. So I will see you in the next video.